At the beginning of the story, we meet Tori and Kyle, a married couple who have been hoping to have a child for a long time. Unfortunately, nothing has worked so far. One day, Tori suddenly hears a strange sound coming from outside. Moments later, an unknown object crashes down from the sky with a massive impact, shaking everything around them. Years later, we see Brandon growing up. Tori is spending time with him. While at school, Brandon is asked a question by his teacher. After answering, he notices a girl in his class smiling at him. That night, while Tori is painting at home, she notices Brandon acting strangely. Without fully understanding why, he seems drawn toward a mysterious spacecraft, the very one that brought him to Earth years ago. Tori and Kyle have secretly kept it locked away in their garage, but Brandon feels an irresistible pull toward it. As he tries to get closer, Tori gently calms him down. The next day, Kyle asks Brandon to mow the lawn. While trying to start the lawnmower, Brandon pulls the cord with surprising force, sending the heavy machine flying across the yard. He is shocked by his own strength and can't believe what just happened. Curious, he walks over to the mower and carefully places his hand against one of its sharp metal blades. Instead of getting hurt, the blade bends while Brandon remains completely unharmed. For the first time, he realizes that something about him is very different. Later, the family goes out to celebrate Brandon's birthday with his Uncle Noah and Aunt Merrily. During dinner, Uncle Noah gifts Brandon a hunting rifle. However, Kyle immediately refuses the gift, explaining that Brandon is still too young for something like that. Brandon becomes upset and disappointed, forcing Kyle to take him home before the celebration is over. As they leave, Caitlin quietly watches Brandon with a concerned expression. The following morning, Kyle notices Brandon ignoring him. When he checks on him, he is stunned to see Brandon casually chewing on a metal fork without hurting his teeth in the slightest. Kyle senses that Brandon is going through unusual changes, but he has no idea how extraordinary they really are. Wanting to spend some time together, Kyle takes Brandon on a hunting trip. During their conversation, he explains that growing up brings many physical and emotional changes, hoping to reassure his son. However, neither of them realizes that Brandon's transformation is far beyond anything a normal teenager would experience. That night, Brandon secretly watches his classmate Caitlin from outside her bedroom window. Inside, she is listening to music on her laptop. As soon as she closes it, she notices someone standing outside staring at her. Terrified, she calls out for help. Her mother rushes into the room and checks outside, but by then, Brandon has already disappeared. Meanwhile, Kyle and Uncle Noah begin searching for Brandon, and after some time, they finally find him. The next day at school, Brandon quietly fills his notebook with strange and mysterious drawings. When Tori asks him about them, he quickly hides the notebook instead of answering. That evening, Brandon silently watches the family's chickens. Kyle notices his unusual behavior and asks if everything is all right. Later that night, Tori and Kyle discover that every chicken has been killed. Tori believes a wild animal is responsible, but Kyle suspects Brandon because of the strange way he had been watching the chickens earlier. The following day, Brandon's class participates in a trust exercise where classmates are supposed to catch one another during a controlled fall. Caitlin is still frightened after seeing Brandon outside her window, so when it's Brandon's turn, she hesitates and doesn't help him. Brandon falls to the ground. Instead of helping him afterward, Caitlin tells everyone that Brandon has been acting strangely. The teacher asks her to apologize and help him up. Still angry over what happened, Brandon reacts in a shocking way. As Caitlin reaches out her hand, Brandon unknowingly unleashes his incredible strength, leaving her seriously injured. Brandon is taken to the principal's office, where Tori has a tense discussion with Caitlin's mother. She demands that Brandon face consequences for what happened, but because he is still a child, the situation is handled differently. Sitting outside the office, Brandon quietly overhears every word of the conversation. That night, Tori and Kyle discuss Brandon's increasingly unusual behavior. Suddenly, they hear a strange sound coming from the garage. When Tori goes to investigate, she is stunned to find Brandon floating in the air near the hidden spacecraft. As she approaches, he suddenly falls to the ground and receives a small injury, something that has never happened before. Tori comforts him, but Brandon has finally discovered the truth. He realizes that Tori is not his biological mother, and that he originally arrived on Earth inside the mysterious spacecraft. Feeling betrayed, he accuses Tori of hiding the truth from him all these years before walking away. Meanwhile, Caitlin is in her room when Brandon quietly visits her. She tells him that her mother has forbidden her from speaking to him anymore. Brandon calmly replies that he will fix the problem and leaves a flower behind before walking away. Meanwhile, Caitlin's mother is getting ready to close the restaurant for the night when she notices a strange symbol on the window. It looks exactly like the mysterious drawing Brandon has been sketching repeatedly. Suddenly, the lights begin flickering on and off. Before she can react, the glass suddenly shatters and a sharp piece strikes her in the eye, making it difficult for her to see clearly. Although her vision is blurred, she realizes someone else is inside the building. Hoping to protect herself, she grabs a baseball bat and starts
starts swinging it around. But Brandon is moving so incredibly fast that she can't keep track of him, making it impossible to defend herself. Desperate, she rushes into another room and locks the heavy metal door behind her. For a brief moment, she thinks she's safe. However, Brandon uses the powerful energy from his eyes to slice straight through the metal door. Moments later, he overpowers her, leaving no chance for escape. The following day, Sheriff Deaver and his team arrive to investigate the incident. While examining the restaurant, the sheriff notices the same mysterious symbol carved into the window, making the case even more unsettling. At school, Brandon's aunt Merrily, who works as a counselor, tries to have a conversation with him. Brandon remains completely silent, refusing to answer any of her questions. Concerned by his behavior, Merrily decides she needs to speak with Tori about what is happening. By now, Kyle is beginning to fear that Brandon isn't an ordinary child. He can't understand how someone so young could possess such unbelievable strength. Later, while Merrily is busy at home, the lights suddenly begin flickering, just like they did at the restaurant. She opens the front door and finds Brandon standing outside. Brandon quietly warns her not to discuss him with his mother, implying that it would be better for everyone if she stayed silent. Angry at his behavior, Merrily tells him to leave immediately and shuts the door. Believing Brandon has gone home, she tries to relax, but Brandon is still watching her from outside the window. A short time later, he quietly slips inside the house. Before anything else can happen, his uncle Noah arrives home and catches Brandon hiding inside. Furious, Noah decides to take Brandon back to his parents and tell them everything. As he tries to force Brandon into the truck, Brandon suddenly uses his incredible abilities, sending Noah crashing into the garage door with tremendous force. Terrified, Noah quickly gets into his truck and drives away. While speeding down the road, he notices Brandon somehow keeping up with the vehicle. Moments later, the truck loses control and comes to a stop. Noah looks ahead and sees Brandon standing silently in front of the vehicle. Brandon slowly rises into the air and uses his incredible strength to send the truck crashing back onto the ground with tremendous force. Noah is left critically injured. Before leaving, Brandon draws his mysterious symbol at the scene using Noah's blood. When Brandon returns home, he calmly tells Tori and Kyle that he has been playing football with some kids and claims they bullied him and tore his shirt. That night, Kyle has a disturbing dream about the day Brandon first came into their lives. He remembers when Tori found the baby inside the mysterious spacecraft and believed he was a miracle sent to them. In the dream, as Kyle removes the blanket covering the baby's face, Brandon opens glowing red eyes. Kyle wakes up in fear. Moments later, he receives a phone call from the hospital informing him about Noah's fatal accident. He also learns that Noah had reported Brandon being at his house shortly before everything happened. Hearing this, Kyle becomes convinced that Brandon is somehow responsible. The next day, Tori and Kyle gently tell Brandon that his uncle has died in an accident. Kyle carefully watches Brandon's reaction and becomes even more suspicious when Brandon shows almost no emotion. Unable to control himself, Kyle demands to know whether Brandon was with Noah before the accident. Brandon ignores the question and starts walking away. Enraged, Kyle grabs him to stop him, but Brandon effortlessly throws him across the room.
Later, Kyle secretly searches Brandon's bedroom and finds the torn shirt Brandon had been wearing. He notices stains on it that raise serious concerns. Just then, Brandon comes out after taking a shower, but Kyle quickly hides the shirt before Brandon notices. Kyle later shows the shirt to Tori, believing it proves Brandon is hiding something. However, Tori refuses to believe that the child she raised could be responsible for such terrible events. Meanwhile, Sheriff Deaver carefully reviews every case file, searching for a connection between the strange incidents. The next day, Kyle takes Brandon on another hunting trip. While they are away, Sheriff Deaver visits Tori and shows her photographs of the mysterious symbols found at multiple locations. He asks whether she recognizes them, but Tori insists she knows nothing. After the sheriff leaves, Tori searches Brandon's room and finally opens his hidden notebook. Inside, she finds page after page filled with the same strange symbol. Even more disturbing, she discovers drawings of the people who have lost their lives, along with writings that suggest Brandon believes he has a much bigger purpose and intends to rule over humanity. Meanwhile, deep in the woods, Kyle asks Brandon to walk ahead. Believing this is his only chance to stop whatever Brandon has become, Kyle quietly raises his rifle and fires. The bullet strikes Brandon directly in the head, but instead of hurting him, it simply falls to the ground without leaving a mark. Realizing what has happened, Kyle desperately tries to find Brandon, but Brandon begins moving through the forest at incredible speed, appearing and disappearing before Kyle can react. A few moments later, Brandon steps out of the shadows and stands directly in front of him. His face is now hidden behind a terrifying red mask. Overcome with fear, Kyle desperately begins apologizing, hoping Brandon will spare him. Kyle desperately begs Brandon to stop, but Brandon doesn't listen. Instead, he unleashes the powerful energy from his eyes, bringing Kyle's life to a tragic end. Meanwhile, Tori is waiting at home when Brandon arrives. Realizing that Kyle is gone, she is overwhelmed with fear and tries to escape, but Brandon flies toward the house at incredible speed, tearing through the roof as he enters. Terrified, Tori hides under a table and quickly calls the police for help. Sheriff Deaver and his team rush to the house as soon as they receive the emergency call. However, before they can do anything, Brandon appears in an instant and effortlessly takes down the sheriff. Tori runs upstairs, hoping to find a way out. One of the deputy officers tries to call for backup, but before he can finish the call, Brandon suddenly appears in front of him and quickly overpowers him as well. Tori realizes she can't survive if she stays inside the house. She quietly escapes through another way and runs toward the garage, where the mysterious spacecraft has been hidden for years. She remembers that Brandon was once accidentally injured by a small piece of the spacecraft. Believing it might be the only thing capable of stopping him, she searches through the wreckage until she finds the sharp, metallic fragment and hides it in her pocket. Taking a deep breath, Tori walks toward Brandon. She speaks to him calmly and lovingly, trying to distract him long enough to get close. When she finally makes her move, Brandon instantly catches her hand before she can do anything. He notices the metal fragment and throws it far away. Feeling completely betrayed by the woman who raised him, Brandon's anger reaches its peak. He lifts Tori high into the sky. As they rise higher and higher above the town, Tori makes one final attempt to reach the child she once loved, but Brandon remains emotionless. A few moments later, he lets her fall. The story then cuts to Brandon silently floating in the sky, directly in the path of a passenger airplane. The next morning, pieces of an aircraft are scattered near Tori and Kyle's home. A news reporter explains that a passenger plane crashed during the night after what authorities describe as a technical malfunction. The crash destroyed the house, and according to the report, the married couple living there, Tori and Kyle, did not survive the incident. And with that, the movie comes to an end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next movie explanation.